Hi honey pies, this is probably going to be my last video for this amazing video fest that I've done because I really need to go downstairs and make a cup of tea. It's pretty late here. I don't know when I'm going to upload these, but it's pretty late right now and I think I've talked myself out. But I really wanted to make this final one with just a few thoughts in it about my path and where it's going and how I feel about, how things are going spiritually and such. I've been dabbling on and off with chaos magic and reading a lot about it and really getting down with some serious Phil Hine. I have been having Phil Hine all over the house, in the bed, in the bath, on the couch. Me and him have been getting filthy. Yeah, I just take him everywhere. And I just absolutely love the way I feel about chaos magic and the way it gels with me and the way it's one of those other things aside from pantheism and the whole concept of pantheism that I found and realised that I was already living. I found it and I realised it was already where I needed to be, and a lot of the stuff that Phil Hine and Peter Carroll and Grant Morrison, etc., posit is stuff that I already believed and already was at one with and was already in my soul. So it's been a really magical progression, and one thing that I'm really sad about with chaos magic is that it seems to kind of be a bit dead. It's a bit like disco. There aren't really that many people that are describing themselves as chaos magicians or chaos witches anymore. Every so often I'll have a little search for a blog or a forum or something like that that's up to date and has a lot of chaos stuff on it, and I'll come across loads of stuff from 2002 or 2008 maybe if I'm lucky. But there aren't really that many kind of active places for people who are dedicated to chaos magic to get together and talk about it and talk about the texts and so on. But somebody did get in touch with me on Eclectic Tarot with a quite lively forum which apparently has quite a lot of chaos on it. So I'm yet to check that out because I'm terrible, but I will, and hopefully that will be where I end up talking about a lot of the chaos stuff, although I will plan a few videos. But yeah, it's not really as lively, and there are a few articles online that I've been meaning to read through about why chaos kind of didn't really stand the test of the time in any significant way. So that I'd be interested to find that out too. And maybe it's just the fact that it was kind of the rebel, magical, anti-system. Maybe it's just the fact that people like systems and people prefer to stick together than stick apart, kind of thing, I guess. I'm not really sure, but and maybe it's just the tone of a lot of the literature that's written about it. It's kind of a bit beat, a bit kind of post-structuralist, I suppose. It's not really written in this kind of very earth-centered, very traditional way. So maybe that's another reason. Sorry, I told you my voice is going. I need tea. So yeah, maybe that's another reason, but I'm just a huge fan of reading about chaos magic at the moment, and that's really doing it for me. I'm also getting massively back into astral projection. I'm not so much saying that I'm doing it every 5 minutes. I have been practicing astral projection on and off for over 10 years, but I'm more getting into reading about different ways of doing it, ways that I haven't known of or thought of before. And I'm also thinking about the different ways that the astral realm could actually be perceived. So that's something that I'll go into on the channel at another point as well. And I am actually reading, it's a really classic book about astral projection, about 21 ways to do it or something, but it's like a really famous book. But it's completely escaped me now. God, I'm terrible. But yeah, I'll bring it up when I talk about astral projection in another video, which will be all about that. It will be about my experiences and also about what I'm learning. So that's a big part of my path at the moment. And another big part of my path is my creativity surrounding tarot. The Tarot for Life e-zine was a really big eye-opener for me in terms of how I can interpret what I think and feel about tarot into something that markedly describes who I am as a creative being. And, it's not very flowery and it's not very impressive in terms of it being kind of really technical or anything like that. But it was just the way that I put it across and the way that I did the collage art for it and the way that I'm now working on an ebook called Intermediate Inspirations, which is basically just my follow-on from the trainee tarot course, where I will help everybody that followed the course or everybody that feels that they're at the end of their beginning stages to move on to intermediate stuff through essays I'm writing and techniques I'm putting together and stuff that actually helped me when I was at that kind of stage. So I really feel that this is not coming from a business perspective for me, although of course it will be for sale on the Etsy shop, but it's not about that. It's really coming from an incredibly spiritual place. It's allowing me to connect on a really deep level with the cards, which I'm really, really loving. So I think that's part of it. And I think, you know, I've done a lot of art magic, and I've come up with a couple of my own magical systems for using symbols and using art and things. That's kind of the main kind of magic that I practice. So I think there's some element of that as well that's been able to come out in the collage work that I'm doing. I'm not saying that I created Sacred Space to do it or anything, but it's yet another way of describing and getting in touch with something that I feel feeds me on a very spiritual basis. I also feel like I'm getting massively in touch with my patron deity at the moment, and I do work well and find real meaning in all of the aspects of the death goddess in every culture. I am a death goddess fanatic. I absolutely love death goddesses, and hell is kind of my homegirl in that way, and has been for quite a few years now. And I realise, you know, that before she came into my life as a very important deity, she was aspects of herself in the collective unconscious were making themselves seriously known to me, and I was reacting to them, but I didn't realise that they were easily personified and worked with as hell. So looking back over the few years before I discovered her and really got in touch with her and what she means to me, it's clear that her image and her archetype was calling to me. So that's really exciting, and I just feel a really strong bond with her. In fact, I'm almost just wishing my life away until Samhain so I can really get down to some kind of serious ritual at the dark time of the year. I really feel like the last Samhain ritual that I did was so incredibly significant, and I feel this one's going to be even more so because the bond is so much stronger. And there are a lot of things that I go into when it comes to Samhain, but hell does feature quite heavily, of course, in that festival more than any other. So yeah, and I'm going to be rereading all of the works of Jung, because I read a lot of Jung and dipped in and out when I was younger, and I talk a lot about the different ideas that he puts forth, and I talk about how I tie them into my spiritual nature and stuff like that. But I feel that I really need to get back to the texts. So it's a very good job that my boyfriend bought me 4 of them for Christmas. So yeah, he was really kind of tuning into the fact that I needed to get back to my granddaddy of spirituality. That's what he is for me. He is my spiritual grandfather. And so I'm going to be getting heavily back into those texts. So expect some serious Jung related content to come up, and do feel free to skip it if it doesn't really flick your switch. I will totally get that. But yeah, for me, it's time to go back. It's time to go back to the roots. It's time to go back to where a lot of my academic ideas about spirituality really begun, when I discovered Jung. And I'm really excited just talking about it, actually. It's going to be exciting. And in connection with that, I do feel that it's time for a little more shadow work. And I'm not talking about like off the cuff kind of spontaneous shadow work where I think, oh, that person really irritates me. What does that have to tell me about myself? I'm talking about really regimented, scheduled shadow work with a dedicated journal and all of that kind of thing, because I feel there's some stuff that needs to come up. I feel there's a big cleanse on the way. And I think there are some things that I need to figure out. I think there are some things that I've been putting under the surface, particularly with regard to a few relationships in my life that I have not yet put to bed. I haven't had that funeral for them that I need to, and I'm slowly coming to grips with that. So I think shadow work is going to be my way, and has long been my way, to release these things. So I'm excited about that, and I may talk about that on the channel as well. Also, I posted a video a while ago which was it was called something like "Every Cell in My Body is Its Own Universe," and I talked about how I had opened Sacred Space that night, and I basically just sat with Spirit and just asked Spirit to present itself to me and for me to feel part of it, which I know I am, but sometimes you need the reminder. I was just going to say how incredibly boiled down and simplistic my time inside Sacred Space has become lately. It's just a lot less flowery than it usually would be, and it's a lot less ritualistic. And I'm not saying that this is a permanent evolution for me, because I'm a big fan of ritual. I'm a very ritualistic girl. I blame my Irish Catholic influence from my father's side of the family for that. So yeah, it is always going to be flowery, and it is always going to be full on, and you know, it's always going to be very much of my own making. It's always going to be chaos. It's always going to be mine. It's never going to be anything I read out of a book, and it's never going to align itself with the tradition, but it is going to be ritual, and it is going to be theatre. And you know, it's like Phil Hines said, if you're going to do something like that, you want to go the whole way. If you want to get in touch with an Egyptian deity, you're going to bloody well dress up as Tutankhamun and burn all the correct incense and whatever. So I'm kind of, yeah, I feel like that a lot of the time, and I feel like there are a lot of different ritualistic systems of my own devising that will always come up. But lately, I've just loved to open sacred space and sit there with a candle or a key crystal or two. And actually, it's more like a therapy session than anything. And Psycholalin made a wicked video about this a while ago, about sensual spirituality and just, you know, allowing that time to just come to you and wash over you. Just ask to feel something and you will receive. You know, if you feel disconnected, ask to feel reconnected. And by God, the universe will plug you in. And it's true. And I've been doing that. I really resonated with that video because that's what I've been doing. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the simplicity really, and how refreshing that is, and how it's obviously what I need. I tend to feel that when there's a lot of simplicity and a lot of straightforwardness in my outer life, my inner life gets more complex in comparison, and there is kind of a lot of flowery notions of ritual and such. And then on the other hand, when things get extremely chaotic and fast moving or unpredictable or in fact uncomfortable or depressing, then spirituality tends to strip itself down, or spiritual practice tends to strip itself down and become very simplistic. And that is what I have needed. And I have done a bit of crying and a bit of getting my head together and a bit of just talking it out in the circle, in fact. And it's been really peaceful and really nurturing for me. I've also wondered over the last 4 or 5 days or so whether or not, because I'm going through a little bit of a hermit phase at the moment, which is why I'm home making videos on a Friday night when pretty much everybody in my friendship group is out at a big gig and will by now be at somebody's house getting incredibly wrecked, I should imagine. And I'm just kind of here on my own, just contemplating. And you know, I'll probably make a cup of tea after this, I'll do some blogging, I'll check in with some people. Yeah, I feel happy to do that. But I do feel there's a time when it comes to being a hermit that I wonder whether I'm hibernating or hiding. And at the moment I'm going through a little bit of that wondering. I'm wondering at this point whether I'm actually hiding away and whether I'm trying to shirk my accountability for how my life is going to go from this point on. And being the hermit is a bit of a complex one because, of course, there are many important reasons to go into that hermit phase and really envelop and clothe yourself in that archetype. And I do that, and that is how I sort a lot of my shit out and always has been. But there comes a point where you go over that invisible boundary, and I'm wondering whether or not I'm doing that. Because I haven't left the house much in the last 4 or 5 days. Of course, I've been very busy. I've been getting readings out, which has been amazing. I've been doing a couple of other bits and pieces for another site, which is really great. I'm loving what I am doing. I'm deeply steeped in the creative process as well. I'm making loads of collage, and I'm just doing a few things that I didn't have the time to do when I was working full time. So I'm really absorbing that again before I throw myself back into a lot of stuff that's more to do with money making and things like that. I'm just enjoying this little holiday, I suppose you could say, from that. But I'm wondering whether or not there is a sense of hiding or hibernating, I suppose. So I'm not really sure whether or not I might have to figure that out. But what I wanted to say, and of course you can take this in regard to your spiritual journey, or you can take it with regard to any part of the path in your life that you're on at the moment, a decision that you need to make, a crossroads you've come to, a place in which you feel stuck, in which you feel scared, or anything like that. I just want to say that it's come to my attention a lot recently that we really need to remember that a lot of the time we only know our path by walking it. We do not know it by sitting there and planning it out to perfection and considering all the different ways it could go, considering the problems we might face, considering the challenges that might come about, working out how to get from one end of the pathway right to the other end, right to our idealised version of the future. And we'll sit there and we'll plan it and we'll mull over it and mull over it and mull over it. But the only way to know exactly how the path is going to go is by walking it, because as you walk it, it will change, and as you walk it, you will also change. So there is no way to really plan and define and narrow down what's going to happen on your pathway. There is no way to plan out the journey from start to finish with absolutely no mistakes and, that guarantee that nothing will go wrong and nothing will go differently, everything will be as you planned it. You're going to drive yourself crazy thinking like that. You are going to sit there and it's going to be like armchair spirituality or armchair living or armchair loving. And who the hell wants that? You need to start walking the path, and then things will become clear. And don't overplan, don't overplan things, because you're just going to sit there dissecting the crap out of every decision you could have made, might make, should make. When in reality, if you don't know what your signature strengths are, if you're having a crisis of confidence and you don't feel that you can put one foot in front of the other and actually walk this path that you are thinking about and contemplating and worrying over, if you don't know what your signature strengths are, then you'll find out once you're on the path, believe me. You will start to realise where your key strengths lie. You will realise who you are a lot more when you're actually on it, doing it, getting your hands dirty, than when you're sat there kind of planning it and replanning it and rehashing it and thinking, I'll start, right, hang on, let me just get a few things together, let me just organise a few things and then I'll start. It's kind of made me realise, that we all do that. I am completely guilty of it too. We all do that, and I've been discussing it with so many of my clients lately that they know in their heart that they can put one foot in front of the other. But it's just that feeling that they want to make certain before they do anything, when in fact it's doing something that will eventually make you more certain. So it's a little bit of a dichotomy and it's very difficult, but you need to be able to tell yourself that you can hold your own hand and you need to trust your own instincts. That's why I always talk about intuition and I always posit the incredible value of it, because it's so important to know that you are there for yourself when everything turns to shit, that you will hold your own hand and that you will believe in yourself. You will make that commitment to yourself. So make that commitment to yourself right now, especially if you haven't done for a while or if you haven't done ever. Make that commitment to yourself right now that you will hold your own hand and that you will be your own friend, you will be your own cheerleader, that you will not be an adversary to yourself, because the inner conflict is bigger than any outer conflict you'll ever fight. You need to be right with yourself and you need to get clear. And I'm not preaching this because I've never been there, I'm preaching this because I have. I think anybody can only ever posit some advice about life once they've been there and done it, and or are going through it, or really wish to help from a pure place, not from a place of superiority, but from a place of real, genuine experience. So yeah, you will become more self-aware and you will learn more through doing. And I do think, there's that dangerous premise of like when people attack philosophy by saying, oh, it's all very well to talk about it, but you've actually got to do something. That's very dangerous, because what we do may be reactionary and what we do may be reductive. And a lot of people feel like they're being more productive by doing something than they are by sitting down and talking about it and hashing it out. But that's why we have so many wars going on, because everybody thinks it's better to do than to actually sit down and talk about it or think about it, philosophize. So there is that problem area, but I think when it comes to your personal goals, the place that you want to get to, the future, as I've said many times, is simply an abstract point in time, and it will change as you do what you do in the present. So do something in the present, because the future isn't going anywhere. It's still going to be there. It might just look a little different to how it did when you first perceived it, but you'll only know that by walking the path towards it. And this is something that I think we learn again and again in our lives with different situations where we feel like fear is really dragging us down. I really feel like we should never underestimate the power of optimism when we step forward, when we step out onto that path and we feel so vulnerable and we feel like we don't know where it's going or where we are. I think a map is drawn as we get used to the terrain. That's how maps were drawn in the old days before we had satellite and things. We just wandered around the terrain and drew it as we went, and then we were able to stand back and look at it on a piece of paper and be like, well, this is roughly what England looks like or whatever. And that's what you're doing when you start out on your journey. You're making the map as you go. You're so concerned about finding that map in a shop so you can be aware of where you're going before you set out, but the map is in your soul. It's not going to be available for you on Amazon. It's in there, so you need to mark out your own terrain by visiting it, by connecting with it. You're not going to be able to find the map before you start out. You need to start out so you can draw the map. And I think finally what I wanted to say was that if you feel like you can't set out on some part of your path in life because you're afraid, then you need to change afraid to excited. I mean, it's simple reframing, and I know it's positive psychology in a nutshell, and I know a lot of people that don't agree with like the simplistic idea of affirmations or anything like that are going to sniff at this. But really, reframing is something that a lot of people just simply forget that they're able to do. You know, the next time you think I can't because I'm afraid, switch it to I'm excited about this part of it. I'm going to do it because I'm excited for this, rather than I'm not going to do it because I'm terrified of that. You know, I mean, if you're afraid of failing, then just change that to I'm excited about learning. I'm excited about exploring myself. It's not about failing, it's about having the experience so that you can be more, so that you can have a more fulfilled, enriching life. You know, nobody around any table at any dinner party you ever go to is going to be interesting if they haven't failed at something. Nobody's going to be a real crowd pleaser and a real interesting person if they've never fucked up. The best people are the people that did that over and over again and really lived to tell the tale and really have a funny way of putting it across as well. You know, nobody wants to be friends with somebody who was like made in Taiwan, popped in a box, never touched, never been anywhere, brand new toy, you know, never had any life experiences, cookie cutter. So, you know, it's all character enriching. It's making you more of what you are. It's helping you to go deeper and explore further. So, you know, all I really wanted to say, as an aside to talking about my own personal spiritual path, is to start walking, you know, because you're never really going to know where you're going. You're never really going to be able to decide that before you leave your comfort zone. So start making your map by looking at your terrain, walking your terrain, figuring your terrain out. The map will come slowly, you know, and if it's an incredibly intriguing map, then you can get a book deal and sell it. Other people would be happy to walk around your terrain for a little while and learn about your story or whatever, but you know, they have a map inside too, and that map is theirs. Only they can chart their own territory, and only you can chart yours. So don't miss out on the opportunity to do it. Do it. Start now. Thanks for listening, guys. Blessed be.